What's up, guys? It's your old pal, Mr. Carly, here again with another unit review guide. This time we're on Unit 4, Executive Branch. So the test is going to have 3 sections as per the usual. You got retake opportunity on topic 1, which is intro to the executive branch. Please go look at your score. If you got a good score on that, then you don't have to retake it. Okay, but there's going to be a practice 3.0 and a 4.0 extension, and then we'll have a topic 2 on presidential power. Same thing. There'll be some knowledge questions. Then there will be a reasoning and practice, and then there's practice reasoning and skills, and then same thing with foreign policy. So I'm going to go through the review guide. Once again, though, just so you're aware of all your resources, this is just 1A, for example. But if you go to the general channel and you go to class materials and you go to the executive branch, everything is in there. In fact, all the slideshows are in there. There's 3 slideshows, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3. Super convenient, almost like there's a system. And the cover sheet's going to be really, really helpful. And hopefully you put everything together in the packet like we did in class last time. But there's the executive branch. Here are the things you need to know. Multiple choice questions are going to usually be kind of vocab based on these things. And then usually a reasoning, 95% 3.0. You have to get most of, if not all of the multiple choice correct. And then you'll have your reasoning skills practice, which are usually going to be, why do I keep saying practice? Reasoning and skills are usually going to be these objectives right here. So talking about the growth of presidential power or specific executive powers in various examples, either historical or current or fictional hypothetical, comparing, contrasting different perspectives on foreign policy, and then applying them to current events would also be what, that part of the test would look like. So I'm going to go through the review guide really quickly and kind of show you where some things are. One thing is in the very first note sheet of the unit, we did, it goes back to 4.1. You have all the powers of the president right here. These are all the formal powers. Article 2 of the Constitution got everything that you need right there. The only thing I didn't include is the election of the president, which we won't really get into in this unit, but we interpreted them. So it's going to give you all the different types of powers that the president has. Okay, so keep that in mind. If it's in there, that's a power the president has. Foreign policy powers, making appointments, commander-in-chief of the armed forces, pardon powers, reprieves, things like that. So keep that in mind. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of that. Make sure that I have everything solidified so we can go through this. If you want a review of this, I would go to my previous YouTube video, which is on topic 1 for that quiz. Okay, so this will tell you a little more about the roles. I'll go through these really quick. President Franklin D. Roosevelt's fireside chats is a regular radio address addressed to the nation regarding the state of the economy and the depression. Really what we're going for here is chief of state, because he's the head of the U.S. government. So he's kind of explaining things that are going on, making people feel better, hopefully. That's kind of what we're going for. President George W. Bush's response to 9/11, sending troops into Afghanistan, overthrow the Taliban government, find al-Qaeda operatives. If you need to know more about that, let me know, because I think that's an important part of U.S. history that not a lot of people know about, because you were born after it. Or were you born like 2014 or so? So something like that. So that one is going to be Commander-in-Chief, Armed Forces. That is an express power, and it's a role. President Obama's negotiation of the Paris Climate Agreement, international agreement by nations, cut greenhouse gas emissions. That's an example of working with other countries. That's going to be diplomacy. So that's chief diplomat. President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, basically declaring that all enslaved Africans in rebel-held territories would be free. That's kind of a chief executive, sort of chief administrator thing. Even though, actually, to be honest, it's not really the best example, because it was with the Confederacy, which was technically not part of the United States at the time, depending on who you asked, I guess, wink, wink. But yeah, so chief executive, though, like what laws are enforced and what the enforcement of those laws is going to look like. It was an executive order. So 24th Amendment, we really need to know about that, is that allows for the president to be removed from power, and the vice president will take temporary duties or can take over power depending on the situation. And the succession is determined. So it goes president, vice president, speaker of the House, president pro tempore of the Senate, secretary of state, so on and so forth. So this is really just important for the project, not so much for the retake of the test. All right, presidential powers. What's the difference between a formal and informal power? So formal means expressed in the Constitution. It specifically says that. Again, that's why I pulled this thing up right here. It's because these are the expressed powers. They're all listed right here in Article 2. Executive power, enforcing the law, okay? Being commander-in-chief and the militia, granting reprieves and pardons, being in charge of the executive departments and the principal officer of the executive departments, doing appointments, making treaties, appointing ambassadors, everything in here. Those are the president's express powers. The only one that's not in there is, I think I put it in here somewhere. The power to veto laws is in Article 1 because it talks about the legislative branch. So those are express powers. Informal powers. Informal mean they are inherent or kind of implied to carry out the formal powers. So executive orders are like the prime example of this because the law does not generally say all the things that the president has to do to carry out the law, but the president is the chief executive, so therefore they get to decide within reason, within the limits of the statute, how they're going to carry out that law. And then they will make orders to their administration on how to do that. Another one is executive privilege. It's not in the Constitution, but there's kind of this idea that because the president is dealing with such sensitive matters and often classified information related to national security, that they have to keep certain things hidden from the other branches or from the public. Appointment powers. The president has the power to appoint people, so it's kind of implied that they have the power to fire people and remove people as well. And you're seeing that being tested right now. Like, what are the limits of that removal power? Okay, so kind of explain that right there. So explain the following executive powers. Again, this is the interpretation of how the executive branch will carry out laws passed by Congress. Okay, and this is inherent or implied or informal. Executive, I just explained that. Okay, pardoning power, this is expressed. Okay, this is granting pardons to people convicted of federal crimes. That's really the only limit, is that it's federal crimes. Most crimes are state crimes. Federal crimes are crimes against the federal government that are charged by the Attorney General and the Justice Department. Most crimes are state crimes, but if you're convicted of a federal crime, then you can be pardoned. Veto power, again, there's not really a great way of saying it, but rejecting laws passed by Congress. And appointment powers is appointing people to executive branch positions, as well as court judges or justices in the federal court. I'm going to check my time right now. I've got 7 minutes left. It's going to be tight. So anyway, all right. 3 cabinet departments, primary responsibilities. There's lots of them. I'm not even able to go over all of them. We did the balanced budget deliberation. That was a good example. They're on the slides. You wrote down some on the note sheet, 4.2a, I think. So Department of State, the diplomacy, Department of Defense, military, Department of Education deals with federal education programs. Department of Agriculture does a whole bunch of stuff with not only agriculture, crops, corporate farming, but also food stamps or SNAP benefits is the technical term for it. Department of Treasury is the chief financial officer, basically, of the United States government. Prints the money as well. What did I do? Cabinet departments. Department of the Interior deals with natural resources in the United States, okay, and the United States federal land. We've got the Department of Homeland Security, which was created after September 11th terrorist attacks, which is kind of dealing with just the security of the United States within its borders, not international security necessarily. Department of Transportation deals with federal highways and roads and other aspects of federal transportation. That's a lot. Department of Energy deals with energy. I don't need to. I'm not going to flex on you and do all of them, or maybe I just would have to sit here for a while to think of all of them. So that's probably not a good idea. All right, power analysis. Now, again, the framework, 4.2a note sheet. What we want to look at are these things. Is formal power. Was there a formal power? Was there a inherent power related to the formal power? So implied. Did it usurp another branch? and congressional disapproval. Okay, those are what we want to look for. So it says, when Franklin D. Roosevelt took office during the Great Depression, he exercised significant presidential powers through his New Deal programs. FDR created numerous agencies like the Works Progress Administration, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and the Securities Exchange Commission through executive orders showing the president's power to establish new government entities. He proposed and pushed Congress to pass unprecedented legislation, demonstrating the president's power to set the legislative agenda. During national crisis, FDR expanded presidential authority, arguing that the emergency required bold executive action. Through his fireside chats and public speeches, FDR used the bully pulpit to build public support for his programs, showing how presidents can use communication to exercise influence. So to say, what do these actions demonstrate? Appropriate use of presidential actions. Okay, well, what is the formal power? Well, there's appointment powers, there's the administrative powers, and there's the chief executive power. So executing the office of the president, the laws, enforcing the laws. Okay. Now, a lot of this goes beyond just those. If you look at those terms, it just says what they are, right? So a lot of this is going to be inherent. A lot of these is Franklin D. Roosevelt in an unprecedented fashion, kind of saying, thank you, Michael, kind of saying that there's extra powers the president needs to take. Okay, so here they are. Obviously, there's the executive orders to carry out New Deal programs and create departments, like literally creating departments in the federal government. You've also got a lot of the kind of like chief of state influence, which is kind of an inherent power, and then you've got a lot of appointments. Well, appointments is an express power, but you've kind of got it going beyond. You got kind of emergency appointments, I guess. So does he usurp another branch? Well, this is a little bit difficult because you could say like possibly like it's carrying out a lot of legislative action without Congress. However, you could also say, but okay, there's emergency powers due to the Great Depression, and some of these actions were to carry out laws passed by Congress. Was there congressional disapproval? I mean, if you studied the entire history of the Great Depression, you definitely could find some. And some of these things that President Roosevelt did, they weren't all declared constitutional. However, he wasn't impeached. In fact, he was the only president to ever serve more than 2 terms. He's on his 4th term when he passed away. So, like, no, not significantly. So I would say, overall, these actions are really cutting it close to an overreach of presidential power. But for the most part, they represent, a broad kind of interpretation of executive power. I would say that they're not overreaching executive power necessarily, but they are definitely showing a broad interpretation. And this is a good example of throughout history, presidential power increasing. Franklin D. Roosevelt, during 2 tumultuous times in U.S. history, the Great Depression and World War II, definitely demonstrated that. I'm not expecting you to reach the same conclusion as me. What I want you to be able to do is work through the framework. Okay, this is the exact same thing we do in the project with President Carly. This is a more difficult example because I want to give you practice that's more difficult so that you're ready for the exam. It's train hard, fight easy. Okay, so that would be how you want to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a separate video for foreign policy. I'll stop this one here because we're not going to have enough time to be able to do it all. So I will catch you on the flip side.